So, work and people. People must be my most favorite topic in the whole world. I absolutely love talking about people. I love watching people. I love observing people. Today I'm going to be talking a lot about the Enneagram. Now, I need to start off by saying there is nothing evil or sinister about the Enneagram. I have to be completely honest. I was feeling so confident about this preach until about 6:30 last night, and the anxiety went ballistic. Rich very kindly prayed for me and said, "Can't believe how calm you're looking." Rich, if you could be on the inside of me right now, you would understand the anxiety that I've been feeling since 6:30 last night. And part of that has been because I've shared this topic of the Enneagram before, and people seem to get a little uncomfortable with the topic. And I can understand why, because you have to start asking yourself who you are, and you have to start becoming a little vulnerable with who you are. But there again, I want to repeat that there's nothing evil about this topic whatsoever. And to put your mind at ease, we at Lifehouse Church, the leadership, and lots of my friends here, have done an incredible amount of work in researching the origins, the foundations, the methodology, the format of what the Enneagram is. And we feel like that it is completely sound. We have questioned God, we have asked God, and He has said, it's okay. We believe that Jesus brings about the change within us. It's not about the Enneagram or any other personality test that we might choose, but it's about Jesus and the gospel, and that is where the change happens. We've spent time researching, questioning, as I said. The origins of the Enneagram as a self-assessment tool are quite obscure, I have to be honest. The concept of the Enneagram can be dated back as far as 400 AD. We do know that it was introduced in the West in the 1970s by Chilean psychiatrists, and then adopted by Jesuit priests, and popularized in 1992 by Franciscan spiritual director Richard Rohr, which many of us know. But as recently as 2012, Pete Scazzero, and some of you may remember we did the emotionally healthy spirituality within our church, he even said, it's a rich resource for Enneagram lovers. Our seminar last month as a staff was very helpful as we identified our types. So they've used it within their context and their church too. So the Enneagram is a personality profiling tool, as I said. It teaches about 9 different types, one of which you naturally gravitate towards. And the reason you do that is because you adopt, in your childhood, you adopt coping skills and ways in which you can feel safe. Each type or number has a distinct way of seeing the world and an underlying motivation that actually powerfully shows what it is, how it is that you behave, how it is that you think, and how it is that you feel. I found the Enneagram in my early 20s, and I've loved learning about personality ever since. So my goal here today is not about punting the Enneagram. Please hear me. You can go and use absolutely any personality profiling tool. You can do whatever it is that you need to do to get to know who you are and to get to know yourself. But I am promoting self-awareness and self-knowledge. My intention is for us to see that we are all unique and we are all different, and yet God loves us all the same, and He has accepted us. Even that person that you work with that you cannot tolerate and cannot stand, that person that causes a trigger inside of you at work, God loves that person, and God is calling us to love that person. So, ask yourself these questions. How can I get the best out of my employees or my co-workers? How can I bring my best self to work? And what can I uniquely offer the people that I work with? Whether I be a stay-at-home mom, a domestic worker, a shop assistant, or a CEO of my own company, the rules stay the same. Get to know yourself. The Enneagram or any other personality test, it's not an excuse to judge anyone else and should never be an excuse to be acting the way that you are. If you're being a punk, own it. And make the changes. Don't use your personality type to say, you know this about me, so just accept it. This is who I am. Own who you are and use the knowledge that you have to inform this about the way that you listen to and treat your co-workers. And try to understand the motives of your co-workers as much as you try to understand your own triggers and your own behaviors. So why should we care about people at work? I have 3 reasons. The first reason is work generally has relational difficulties. According to business.com, 3 out of the top 4 reasons for stress at work reported by people are related to workplace relationships. Doesn't it make so much sense? I work for an IT company of 40 people, and I sit in HR. I'm one of those random people that sit with other random people to interview random people and decide whether those random people should work with our random people. It's kind of random. And that's who we end up working with, selected by random people. When you know and understand that the world is made up of a whole bunch of different types of people, then we can make space for others. Reason number 2 we should care about people. Work can be stressful. I'm not even sure I need to say too much more. But COVID has thrown in a whole bunch of complications. Working from home, working remotely, having our kids right next to us while we're on a Zoom session. There's been a lot that's been thrown at us, and we're all jumping through hoops. So we need to be aware of our stress, and we need to navigate that stress. And we need to pick up tools that can help us to move back to a healthy place. And thirdly, we spend a heck of a lot of time at work. So we need to be healthy in that space. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. We have paid for all 40 of our staff members at work to do the Enneagram test. And I have the privilege of sitting with each and every single one of them and working through their report, working through their test. We look at stress place, we look at growth and health, and we look at the way we can motivate each other and actually work together. Just a quick example of what we've done just this week. Our youngest employee is a 23-year-old. I'm sure he won't mind if I mention his name. His name is Ethan. And he works for us in Cape Town. He's a type 6 on the Enneagram. And as you can see, the type 6 is probably the most anxious type that you'll find on the Enneagram. And this young guy is working in an organization where I promise you our guys are skilled. They are so good. They are so knowledgeable. And that tech space is, as you can imagine, just knuckle down and get the work done. And he's struggling to keep up. Together with his anxiety, he's not willing to risk. He's so scared to try anything. And as a result, our leaders have felt like he's not performing. So I took him aside just this last week and I said to him, Ethan, what do you need from us? What do we need to do to actually promote you and to make you feel better about what you're doing? And we pulled together one of our other members who's a type 7 on the Enneagram. And he's also a Christian, so that was kind of also my little weapon on the side. But we brought together Mac to set up a mentoring program with Ethan. And Mac is a 7, so he loves risk. He is fun. He's enthusiastic. He absolutely loves the thought of bringing Ethan up to speed. He's also been with us for so many years. So this is just the perfect mentoring relationship. And what was so lovely is that Ethan messaged me after we had suggested this mentoring relationship, and he just said, thank you, Leisha, for believing in me and somehow putting into words what I was feeling. Thank you for your support and your reassurance. And I can't wait to see what this mentoring relationship is going to look like. So God has given us all the ability to make space and to see people. I know that I've done my fair share of moaning about work, trust me. There are elements of work that drives me nuts, but I love the people that I work with. And I know that God has called me to be a light in that environment for now, to get to know the people and to offer them a space to be seen and recognized and noticed. So what is work? Tim Keller has written a book, it's called Every Good Endeavor, and it's connecting your work to God's work. And he talks about 5 truths. Truth number 1, work starts with God. Genesis begins with God doing work. He is creating the heavens and the earth and the animals, and Tim Keller points out in his book that it is not a burden for God to do this work. In fact, it brings in great joy. Work is something that we get from God. Truth number 2, work is good. God created work even before sin enters the picture. In Genesis 2, verse 15, it says, "The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to care for it." Work is morally good, but it is also good for us. When cut off from work, we realize that we are made to thrive with order in our lives. We're made to work. And if we don't, it goes against our design. Truth number 3, work serves a greater purpose. Work is not just for our own personal benefit. It actually helps us to serve God and to serve the mission of God. We are God's ambassadors. And Keller says, the question regarding our choice of work is no longer what will make me the most money and give me the most status. But the question must be, how with my existing abilities and opportunities can I be of service to other people, knowing what I do about God's will and human need? And that's why it's so important for us to get to know ourselves. To know yourself is to know God, and to know God is to know yourself. Truth number 4, work is not the way it should be. Tim Keller says that you should expect to feel regularly frustrated in your work, even though you might be in exactly the right vocation. We live in a fallen world. We work with broken people. We are broken people. And so we can't expect that work is going to be awesome our whole life, unfortunately. And the 5th truth is, work is redeemed through the gospel. This is the good news that can free us from immense pressure and relentless cycles of having to prove ourselves, and to secure identity through our work. No matter how great our job, how high we've climbed that ladder, how much money we can earn, our identity will never ever be secure in our work. We can only be secure through Jesus' identity in us, shining through us and in our true self. So what is our true self? Our true self is our true identity in Jesus Christ. It's the way God created us to be, and it can never be destroyed. Think about that for a minute. It can actually never be destroyed, the way God has created us to be. It's our original nature. No matter what the enemy tries to do, he cannot destroy that. In 2 Corinthians 3, verse 5, it says, "Not that we are adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our adequacy is from God." So then, what is our false self? Our false self is our sin. It's our shadow self. And it's all that we reject about ourselves. It's that stuff that blocks us from realizing our inherent union and our identity with God. So that false stuff kind of creeps in and shows its ugly head every now and then, because we have born into the world where the enemy just wants to attack and wants to get at us all the time. So what is the virtue then? I had to look in the dictionary exactly what the virtue is. But virtue is defined as behavior showing high moral standards. So that is what essentially we should be working towards, right? A behavior that shows high moral standards. Many Enneagram sources teach that the virtue is what changes us, but we would say that it is Jesus and the gospel that changes us. And the virtue is simply the outward fruit of the inward change. So we have to do the work with Jesus to bring about the change. And then we act out the virtue and the behavior that is a morally high standard. So ask God to bring about the self-awareness, change and transformation in your own life. And you will automatically grow in patience and compassion for the people around you. So there used to be a burglar protection device that was sold in big cities. It was an exact replica of a slimy cabbage, equipped with a little door on the one side, and in there you could put all your jewelry. And then you'd take this cabbage and you put it in the refrigerator in the vegetable department. So of course, if the burglars came and ransacked your home, they would see this cabbage and they would be repulsed by the slimy cabbage and they would leave your jewels alone. Sometimes change is a matter of remembering where you have hidden your own jewels. Where have you hidden your true self that's sitting in that slimy cabbage? Ask God to show you the walls that you have built to protect yourself. Ask God to give you the wisdom to notice and understand that the people that you are working with and the people that you are living with are doing the exact same thing, that they are building walls to protect themselves. Protecting themselves because their true healthy selves are stuck away in a rotten cabbage in the fridge. And we seem to all be doing that. Ask God to expose that. So, I'm going to move on to the Enneagram. As I said earlier, there are 9 particular types in the Enneagram. And I have loved this tool, I have to be honest. So as much as I'm saying there are other better ones, I do love this one. And I know that some people hate it, some people love it, but we're going to go through the 9 different types, and we're just going to briefly look at what people might look like as they show up in work, as their true self, but then also as their false self. So the brokenness, the darker self that comes up. Starting with our strict perfectionist. You will see these little blue slides over here. This is what the Enneagram types would say to people at work. So the Enneagram type 1, who is your strict perfectionist, would always say, "Why can't you just do what you say you're going to do?" And of course they say, "Like I would," because that's what strict perfectionists would do. Strict perfectionists in their true self actually reflect God's goodness and His rightness in the workplace. We love having perfectionists at work. If anybody needs any help with being a perfectionist, ask Carly. We are sure now that she's a strict perfectionist and puts all of the pressure on her. Nobody else needs to put any pressure on because she does that enough for herself. They're reliable. They have an amazing work ethic. They're not driven by ego or a need to succeed, but they do want to be right. They're able to see flaws and they're able to bring solutions. And they're very forgiving for people when they ask for forgiveness. And the interesting thing about ones is that they are so busy being critical of themselves that they find it very difficult to forgive themselves. So if you've made a mistake and you go to a 1 and you say, "I'm so sorry for doing that," the 1 actually breathes a sigh of relief because they go, "Thank goodness other people are making mistakes. It's not just me." But then that false self does seem to rear its ugly head every now and then. And that false self is about brokenness. And the passion or the sin of the 1 is anger. Ones have a deep-seated anger because the world is not perfect and it makes them so cross. The world is inherently just such a bad place for a 1. And so this anger starts to fizzle and sizzle inside of them. They can seem mad. Just watching how Geordie's looking at Carly. But they can seem mad and they can seem tense or they can seem rigid, but not want to talk about it. And they see anger as wrong, so they spend a lot of their time feeling guilty about their anger, but trying to manage their anger at the same time. And they can seem critical and point out what is wrong all the time. You might be thinking of these people in your workplace, or it might be triggering something in you because this is who you are. But the message that ones need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is you are good just as you are. Just as you are. You don't have to strive to be perfect all the time. In Psalm 139, 13 and 14, it says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." So ones, and the ones that are in your workplace, God delights in you, and you are very, very good. So the unfair expectations, this is what will indicate that you're dealing with a 1, is they will say to you, "Why can't you just do what you say you're going to do?" Like I do. Type 2 on the Enneagram, your considerate helper. They reflect God's unconditional love and care in the workplace. We love 2s in the workplace because they're personable. They remember when everybody's birthday is, and they will bring you cake and coffee and some extra cake for next week, just in case you run out. They're attuned to others all the time. They're selfless and they're generous, and they want the team to succeed. It's also not just about them. They want to bring people along with them, and they want to see everybody succeed. And they bring a sociable self to work. But when that false self creeps in, their passion or their sin is pride. Why? Because they're so good at helping that they feel like they don't need help. So they'll spread themselves really thin and they'll get exhausted, but they'll have too much pride to actually go and ask for help. They feel like they're indispensable and that the world will fall apart without them. So they can get a little ugly and they demand to be appreciated when they're feeling unhealthy or broken. They need to be needed, and if they don't receive this affirmation, they can sometimes turn a little manipulative and they can try and make everybody else look bad so they look good. And when unhealthy, they can take everything personally and spread themselves too thin, as I said. But the message that twos need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is, you are valued, loved, and wanted. No matter how much you work at being appreciated by everybody else, God appreciates you already, and you are wanted by Him. So in John 15:16, it said, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you may go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. You can't help God enough, twos, and the twos out there at work. You can't help God enough. God has already chosen you. The unfair expectation that twos have on others at work, why can't you just be more selfless? They cannot understand why it is that everybody just doesn't go around helping each other. That's what their motivation is, and that's what they want to see everybody else doing at work. So it blows their minds. Your type 3 is your competitive achiever. They reflect God's hope, God's radiance, and God's beauty, because they're about image. 3s love image, and they more specifically love the image of success, and they strive for that all the time. So in their true self and their healthy self, they're very goal-oriented. You can't keep up with 3s a lot. They're hardworking and they're incredibly productive. A lot of energy, and they get things done. Communication is concise and efficient, and they find the best way to communicate to their audience because they've worked out exactly what that audience needs. And they don't waste any time. They read the room and the audience, and they inspire people by their example. A lot of people want to be like 3s because they look like the people who have got it all together. But when that false self comes to work, their passion or their sin is deceit. And the reason why it's deceit is because they don't want to stop for long enough to see that they've actually worn mask after mask after mask to be able to impress the people around them, to be able to speak to the audience the way the audience expects them to speak. So when they're stopped and they're overworked and they're stressed, they realize that they don't even remember who they are because they've performed and they've brought in an element of deceit in their own lives that they didn't know crept in. They can't slow down. Happy for you to tag along, but don't get in the way because I will swerve around you, that's for sure. And I don't want to stop to hear your concerns. They're not people-oriented in this space at all. In fact, they forget they're working with people. They're saying, come along! And they're heading in that direction, and when they look behind them, there's people flailing in the wake of who they are. And they wonder why they've got to the end on their own. When their success is threatened, then you are threatening their identity. It's all about the success and the image of success for them. The message that 3s need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is, you are loved for being you and not for what you do. So 3s, you can slow down. It's not all about the success. In Isaiah 43 verse 1, it says, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name, and you are mine. The unfair expectation that 3 have on others at work is, why can't you just work harder? I mean, you can always work harder, right? Like I do. Our type 4s, the intense creatives, love these people. They reflect God's creativity and depth in the workplace. The true self of 4s are emotionally real. They will walk into any workplace environment and they will want to talk deep and they will want to talk authentic. They are naturally creative. 4s are able to bring their own creativity and flair into any job. Give them a mundane job to do and they will make it amazing. They will bring about the creativity and the absolute beauty of God. They're naturally attuned to others and want to know where others are emotionally. So they will walk in and you'll be telling the 4 your life story before you even realize that you'd opened your mouth. They will know it all because they're able to naturally draw it out of you. And they seek authenticity. So unlike our 3s before who are wearing masks all the time, 4s Well, you will never get away with not being authentic with a 4, and 4s will never be inauthentic. They love high quality work as well. But when their false self rears its ugly head, then their sin or their passion is envy. And the reason for that is because they always feel like something is missing. So when they're feeling stretched and when they're feeling stressed, they constantly feel like that they don't have enough to give, and everybody else has got that thing to give. So they look at what people bring and they feel like they can never live up to it. So they start to envy the stuff that they see in other people. They can tend to take their co-workers on a bit of an emotional roller coaster. So you never know what you're going to get with that 4. You're going to get the happy 4, you're going to get the sad 4. And so you feel a little bit unsure of what the 4 is bringing to the party on that day. And they will internalize negative criticism and in an unhealthy place, but they won't accept anything that is good or healthy that has been told to them. So they struggle to take on the positive stuff that's been said to them. They can also they can become bored and distracted because things aren't creative enough or things aren't real enough. And they can become bitter and, as I said, envious because they perceive other people as being better than who they are. But the message that 4s need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is, you are special and you are unique. You have got stuff that other people don't have to offer. Psalm 139 says, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me, and nothing is broken. 4s, absolutely nothing. So can you imagine being able to come alongside a 4 at your workplace that just wants to be told, you're amazing, you're creative, and I appreciate you, in every little bit of authenticity that you can offer. The expectation that 4s have is, why can't you just express your emotions? Imagine the 4 saying that to a 3 who's just goal-oriented, moving in this direction, and the 4 is going, can you just tell me how you feel? The 3 is going to go mad. Type 5, specialist. And 5s reflect God's wisdom in the workplace. 5s love to take in knowledge. They take in data all of the time. Lots of facts, lots of figures. And then they take all of this information and they make it digestible for the people around them. I know for a fact that Louise is of type 5 on the Enneagram, and Gary asks her to sometimes read books for him, to take all of the data, make it digestible for him, and then say, here we go, Gary, this is all you need to know. And she's amazing at that. She's amazing at taking in all of this information. They bring perspective, type 5s. 5s are really good at keeping boundaries in the workplace as well, and they understand relational lines. So you're not going to get 5s enmeshed in weird relationships at work at all. 5s are very low in the drama department. They are not the ones gossiping about their co-workers or getting upset or being sensitive. They're calm and even-tempered, and they're very objective. They'll slow you down and they'll say, let's look at the facts. Slow down. But when that false self rears its head, the passion or the sin of the 5 is greed or avarice. Greed because you take in so much knowledge and you don't really want to offer that knowledge to anyone. And the avarice is like a stinginess where you don't want to offer of yourself, your time, your energy, or anything that you know. So what happens is boundaries are taken a bit too far, as 5s can sometimes never want to be interrupted. My company of 40 are majority 5s. And those 5 sit behind computer. I understand why they've ended up in an IT department or an IT company, because they literally can sit behind their computers all the time and just say, boundaries, boundaries, don't mess with me, don't interrupt me, just give me this focus that I need. And they can become resistant to collaboration. They're part of a team, but not really. They can become annoyed and impatient towards others that seem to be wasting their time. And they can sit on a decision for too long, stuck in research mode, taking in information all of the time, analyzing. And this can make 5s unrelatable, as they don't focus on people often, but instead focus on getting the information for what needs to be done. The message that 5s need to hear from God is, your needs are not a problem. Psalm 55:22, cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. God has put people in your life to help carry your burden, 5s. It's okay. You don't have to be independent all the time. Come alongside the 5s at work. I love being with my 5s at work because I force them to talk. I pull them into meetings all the time and I go, how are you doing? What's going on? Come on, share of yourself. The unfair expectation that fives have on people at work is, why can't you just pay attention? It's all about the information. Our loyal skeptics, our type sixes, they reflect God's faithfulness and courage. Remember I spoke about Ethan, possibly the most anxious on the Enneagram? Sixes have an ability to make a commitment and follow through with it, even when the other party doesn't. They are probably the most loyal people that you can find. They always have a sense of camaraderie, and they are super loyal in it for the long haul. Sometimes sixes will actually overstay where it is that they should be because they are so incredibly loyal, and it might actually become unhealthy for them. They're inquisitive and they're intuitive. They see all the holes, all the roadblocks, and possible setbacks. Worst case scenario thinkers. They ask the right questions to make sure the team is prepared. Can you imagine being able to harness that information for those who are just ready to go, 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 and haven't stopped to think where things could go wrong? They're honest and straightforward, and the interesting thing about sixes is they're not scared to question authority. So if they see authority making a wrong decision or going in the wrong direction, they'll be the ones to point it out and say, hey, hold on, I think you should come on track a little bit here. They often are the ones adulting the room or adulting the team. They bring that kind of perspective. They also bring calm in crisis because they've already got a plan for everything that's going to go wrong. So when the crisis actually hits, they're there, they're available, and they're calm. But when their passion or their sin comes up and their false self rears its head, they have a passion of fear or a sin of fear, and they can create an atmosphere of anxiety within a workplace. Anxiety can be a little bit contagious, and if you're forever thinking of worst case or things that can go wrong, then you're going to be anxious. They're very particular about rules, and they leave very little wiggle room for creativity. We'll be getting to the sevens next, and when you see what they're like, you can understand that sixes can drive them nuts because sevens don't like people to say no and not give them wiggle room. Their reluctant sixes are reluctant and unsure all the time, and they can create a problem where there isn't one. So they have skepticism and doubt and questioning, which can filter into the team. But the message that sixes need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is, you are safe in my care. In Psalm 46, 1 and 2, it says, God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. And what is their unfair expectation? Why can't you just think things through? Because there's so much that can go wrong. Then we have our fun type sevens. I live with one. Oh, my heavens. They reflect God's joy and abundance. Sevens bring the child heart. They did not abandon their inner child like the rest of us have. They just want to keep that inner child having fun in their lives. Their true self at work, they bring wonder and enthusiasm to the workplace. They have optimism and energy. They can be super fun, hilarious at times, and so funny. You want your seven at work, and when the seven comes to work in not such a good mood, you feel it immediately because that energy and that excitement and that atmosphere disappears. They can take a mundane work day and turn it into something fun, somehow. And they're a fountain of ideas, brainstorming and creative, big picture thinkers, but don't ask them to follow through with the detail very often. That is why they need people to walk alongside them, because they'll think of everything and go, 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 and change their minds and go, 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 and everybody else is going, okay, that was a good idea, let's get it done. Let's get it done. They also want an even playing field, so they're not big on hierarchy. We must all be mates, because that way we can have fun together. Don't be my boss and tell me what to do and set limits. Let's just have fun together. But even these amazingly fun people can have a false self. And their passion or their sin is gluttony. And the reason it's gluttony is because they actually don't sit still, and they only want adventure, and they only want fun, and they don't want to stop to see that life can be real and broken and hard and hurtful sometimes. So they can become quite scattered and monkey-minded, and they move very quickly from one subject to the next subject to the next. And I know the sevens in the room are sitting here and saying, well, what's wrong with that? I know. So they move really quickly, and people also struggle to keep up with them. And they don't understand that we can't complete anything. It's just idea after idea. They can get bored really easily. I know that Bruce he's been sitting here this entire time just waiting for us to talk about sevens because the rest is not important. The other thing is that they can put a positive spin on absolutely anything. And I know that that sounds amazing. And at times that is what we need, that positive spin. But sometimes sevens can be a little bit uncaring and they don't quite think it through. So what happens is that they make a positive thing about something that could be quite serious. Somebody could come to work and be feeling really down or be feeling like, maybe somebody's just passed away, and the seven just goes in there and makes a joke. Why are you looking so down? Come on, and this is party time. And somebody can be really hurt in the process. So as much as that positivity is great, they can tend to be quite uncaring in actually stopping and dealing with the emotion that might be existing in the moment. They buck against limits. Don't tell them no, because then they will have a reason to make it a yes. Phil's even giggling on this. They can overlook themselves and want to keep their options up. They can overbook themselves. They don't overlook themselves, definitely not. They do not overlook themselves. They can overbook themselves and want to keep their options open in case something better comes up. So there's always got to be an option of something better that could take place, whether it be a better wife, whether it be something more fun to do at work, something. It's the bucking against the limits. The message that sevens need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is you can be completely satisfied. Psalm 34, verse 108 says, "Those who seek the Lord lack no good thing." You can stop striving for every good thing after another. You lack no good thing because you have God. The unfair expectation that sevens have, why can't you just have a good attitude about it? We're almost at the end, guys. Type 8, the active controller. They reflect God's power and God's protection. They contend for what is good and what is right, especially on behalf of other people in their healthy space. They will fight for justice and they will bring leadership into every single situation. Incredible people to have around. I used to be very scared of type 8 because I'm a type 9 that we're getting to, and I don't do conflict and I don't do big energy and challenge very well. And I have been working with a type 8 at my work, and he has shifted my mind completely. He's probably my best friend at work. And he's the kind of guy that will put his arm around you, and he will tell you how great you are and how much you are loved, and then he'll clap you on the side of the head at the same time and say, okay, now this is what you need to fix, and this is the challenge. And he somehow has got it right. That big energy, that amazing, challenging thing that he brings to the workplace, he's able to do it with love all the time. And I love watching him at work. So they fight for justice. They get stuff done. They also have a high amount of energy and action-oriented, more energy than the rest of us put together, quite possibly. They make really good team players, especially if you have them on your side. You want them to have your back because they will pull you along and they will support and they will guide. They can see the big picture. So they understand where the whole ship is heading, and they don't get caught up in the details. They have clarity of vision, their boldness and conviction of thought. Are rich. But, believe it or not, and this can't be true, right, Rich, for 8s? No sin or passion or any false self. But their passion or their sin is actually a lust for control and power. So 8s can start to challenge rules and authority and those in leadership. Can pick those up at workplace really, really quickly. They think they are above the rules. They can become so focused on keeping the ball rolling that they can steamroll over people. They struggle to put limits on their intensity, and the crazy thing is that they can intimidate and they can manipulate people and not even understand how intense they are being. They don't have a lens for that within their own being. And even though they see their talk style as being honest, it can sometimes be mean and hurtful and, as I said, intimidating. But the message that 8s need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is, you are protected by Him. Deuteronomy 31 verse 8 says, the Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Isn't that amazing? Because 8s don't come across as afraid, and yet God wants to give them that message. Don't be afraid. I'm in control. And the unfair expectation is, why can't you just stand up for yourself? Can't understand that people might be intimidated or scared or anxious. Just stand up for yourself. It's easy, like I do. And lastly, our type 9s. Now, I know there's not a perfect number on the Enneagram, but there is. Hey, neats. Hey, George. So your type 9s on the Enneagram are your adaptive peacemakers. So as I was saying, when I stood up here this morning, I was filled with anxiety, and I hate that feeling because I'm this adaptive peacemaker. I want peace on the inside. I want peace on the outside. I want peace for everyone here. Right now I'm going, Leisha, you're taking too long. In the back of your head, everybody's getting fidgety. Everybody's getting uncomfortable. There's not going to be peace, so hurry up. And that's why language is suddenly getting a lot faster. But that's actually what's happening on the inside of me, as much as I'm trying to display this peaceful part of who I am. So they bring about God's peace and God's oneness in the workplace. Their true self is amazing. They bring a sense of all that's going on to work, and what they say is that God is in control. It's going to be okay. So you know that saying where they say everything will be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end? That must have been a 9. A 9 must have come up with that saying, because it's all going to work out in the end. They have this positive attitude of, I know it doesn't feel great right now, and that's okay, and I'm with you in this, but it is going to be okay in the end. God is in control. They're very objective and they're unbiased. They're able to see everyone's point of view and are concerned with where everyone else is coming from. They're very supportive of others and don't feel the need to be in the limelight or the spotlight, and they don't feel the need to make it all about them. And they make others feel really relaxed. They're dependable and reliable, and they don't make sudden changes. They bring the chill into a stressful environment. I read an example this week where they were talking about a 9 being like a flat, big truck. And I don't know much about trucks, but the way they were describing it was that those long, flat, big trucks are, if they're not weighted, they'll move around quite a bit. And they need weight. They need weight to be stable and to be able to, really be able to drive along the road quite well. And that's what 9s need. They need a little bit of weightiness to keep them grounded, to put a little bit of pressure on, and they'll keep going in the right direction. They can bring a huge amount of goal-oriented and action-oriented, but they just need that little bit of pressure to help them along. Their false self, and 9s do have a false self, and their deadly sin is sloth. So they end up numbing out. When there's conflict, when there's stress at work, they don't want to hear about it. They want to numb to their feelings. They want to numb to their emotions. And they can look like they're being a little bit lazy when it comes to dealing with the people around them. So it's not sloth in terms of exercise and energy. It's sloth in terms of dealing with the important things. They want to deal with non-essentials around them. And they can feel overwhelmed and scattered by stress. They can feel like their heads are cluttered, and they struggle with mental clarity. So to try and get them back on track can be quite difficult to do, because all they can think about is the conflict and the unpeace that they're trying to get rid of the whole time. And they tend not to speak up. They think they've got nothing to offer. And they can actually be really stubborn. So even though they need help to get back on track a little bit, they don't want to hear what help you've got to offer them, because they're in such a state of keeping the calm that they become stubborn in any kind of help or guidance. Are you nodding? They don't like being bossed around at all. The message that 9s need to hear from God to bring about forgiveness and healing is, your presence matters, and I see you. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 says, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. What is the unfair expectation that they bring? Why can't you just let it go? Why do we have to deal with the stress and the conflict and the anxiety? That just let it go. It's going to be okay in the end. So I want you to know that that is a really brief overview of the 9 Enneagram types. And as I said, this has been my choice of personality profiling that I've chosen, and it works for me in my workspace. It works in a coaching environment. But it is not the only one out there. My encouragement is to get to know yourself. Get to know yourself more, and as you do, you will get to understand God more. And ask God to teach you and give you wisdom about the people that you work with. He has put you there for a reason. He needs you in that space to reflect His perfection, compassion, radiance, creativity, enthusiasm, strength, and peace. Use that opportunity to do just that. But you've got to get to know yourself first. Thank you.